Rhaenyra just did something no one thought she had in her. She killed a man with her own hands, and it might be the moment that changes who she really is forever. Forget the queen who cried over her sons. Forget the mother who begged for peace. What comes next in House of the Dragon Season 3? Episode 3 could be the beginning of something far darker, the birth of Rhaenyra the Cruel. And if the books are anything to go by, what she does next on that Iron Throne is going to shock everyone watching, for years. Rhaenyra fought for something that was always supposed to be hers. Her father named her heir. Her father made every lord in Westeros swear an oath to her. And yet at every single turn she was pushed aside, doubted, and forced to watch as men who had no real claim tried to take what belonged to her. Now she finally sits on the Iron Throne. She finally has the crown. But getting there cost her more than she ever imagined it would. She has lost 2 sons. She has watched her family tear itself apart. And in the most recent episode, she did something she had never done before. She took a life with her own hands, killing Sir Otto Hightower herself instead of letting Daemon do it for her. That single choice tells us everything about where her character is headed. She did not want to look weak. She did not want to be seen as a queen who needed a man to do the difficult, brutal work of ruling. So she picked up the blade herself. And now that she knows what it feels like to kill, the real question is what that knowledge does to her going forward. Does it break something inside her? Or does it wake something up that was always there, waiting? Because here is the thing about Rhaenyra. In the books, this exact period of her rule is described very differently from how we have seen her so far on screen. The small folk of King's Landing do not remember her as a fair queen or a grieving mother. They remember her as Rhaenyra the Cruel. That name alone should tell you just how dark things are about to get. Her decisions on the throne are described as being driven by paranoia, by grief, by a desperate need for revenge, and by financial desperation so severe that it forces her hand into making choices no one would expect from the woman we met back in Season 1. Money is already a problem. The trailer for this next episode makes that painfully clear, with dialogue suggesting there is a great deal that needs to be done and almost nothing to pay for it. A queen without funds is a queen who has to get creative, and creative decisions made under pressure rarely end well for anyone standing nearby. On top of the financial strain, she is staring down real threats from every direction. Aemond Targaryen is still out there, wounded but not confirmed dead. Ormund Hightower is marching with the largest remaining army in all of Westeros. And somewhere in the shadows, her family's usurpers are regrouping, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. All of that pressure sitting on one person, especially a person who has already lost so much, is exactly the kind of situation that turns grief into rage. We saw what losing Lucerys did to her. It nearly destroyed her from the inside, pulling her into a depression so deep she could barely function as a leader. But Jacaerys' death seems to have done something completely different. Instead of pulling her under, it seems to be pushing her forward, fueling her with a need to make sure her son did not die for nothing. That shift from grief that paralyzes to grief that drives action is dangerous. It is the kind of shift that turns a grieving mother into a ruler who is willing to do whatever it takes to protect what is left of her family and her claim. And that brings us to Daeron. Most people forget about him because he has been off-screen since he was sent away for his own safety in the previous season. But he is Alicent and Viserys' 3rd son, and his appearance in the trailer for Episode 3 is not a coincidence. If Rhaenyra becomes the ruler the books describe her becoming, a ruler willing to eliminate any threat no matter how young or seemingly harmless, then Daeron's return puts him directly in her path. Will she actually be able to go through with something that dark? He is still just a boy. But then again, so is Lucerys. So is Jacaerys. She has already lost 2 sons to this war, and if she starts thinking like a queen instead of a mother, the calculation becomes brutally simple. Every person with a claim to the throne is a threat, and every threat has to be dealt with, no matter how uncomfortable that decision feels. If she truly becomes Rhaenyra the Cruel, the way the histories describe her, then eliminating Daeron would do more than remove a rival. It would send a message to everyone still loyal to the Greens that she is not the same woman who once begged for peace. She is not going to hesitate anymore. And that message, delivered through fear rather than diplomacy, might be exactly what she thinks she needs to hold onto a throne that has already cost her everything. While Rhaenyra wrestles with the weight of the crown, across the battlefield another storyline is quietly building towards something just as dangerous. Aemond Targaryen is lying somewhere in Harrenhal, badly wounded after the brutal blow he took from Sir Simon Strong. and right now his survival is hanging by a thread. The last we saw of him, he was fading in and out of consciousness, begging Alys Rivers, the woman many call the witch, to heal him. The camera showed us his point of view slipping in and out of focus, a clear sign that he was moments away from passing out completely. That single detail matters more than it might seem, because it sets up one of the most interesting decisions of the entire season, and it does not belong to Aemond at all. It belongs to Alys. Everything that happens next depends on what she wants, and what she wants has been made very clear already. Alys wants Harrenhal. She has been the one keeping that castle running, keeping it from falling apart, and yet she has no name, no title, no lineage that anyone in power actually respects. When she pleaded with Daemon for the castle in the previous episode, he brushed her off without a second thought, treating her like she was beneath the conversation entirely. That kind of dismissal does not just sting, it plants a seed. And seeds like that tend to grow into something far more dangerous than anyone expects. So here is where the real tension begins. Alys is now standing over the second most powerful claimant to the Iron Throne on the green side, and he is completely helpless. She could let him die. She could hand him over to Daemon, wounded and unable to fight back, and hand the Blacks the single biggest victory of the entire war in one move. It would eliminate one of Rhaenyra's greatest threats instantly, and it would be so easy. But think about what Alys would actually gain from that. Nothing. Daemon already made it clear he does not see her as someone worth rewarding, so why would handing him a gift change that? It would not, which is exactly why the more likely outcome is far more calculated. Alys heals Aemond, but not out of loyalty, not out of kindness, and definitely not for free. She heals him because she sees an opportunity to secure something for herself that Daemon refused to give her. If Aemond survives because of her, and if Sir Simon Strong and his entire bloodline are gone, then there is no one left standing between Alys and the one thing she has wanted this whole time. Harrenhal becomes hers, not through inheritance, not through marriage, but through leverage. She saves the life of a prince, and in exchange, she finally gets the power and the title she has been denied. That single decision would completely shift the balance of the war. Aemond, one of the most dangerous dragon riders left alive, survives to fight another day, and he does it while owing his life to someone who now expects to be paid back. That is not a small thing. That is a debt that could shape everything he does for the rest of the season. And it raises a bigger question, too. What happens when Aemond finds out how close he actually came to dying, and who chose to save him? Does that change how he sees Alys? Does it change how he moves forward, now carrying the knowledge that his survival was not guaranteed? That it was a decision someone else made for reasons that had nothing to do with loyalty to him or his family? While all of this unfolds in Harrenhal, another player is stepping further into the spotlight, and this next episode looks like it is finally going to give him room to breathe. Ormund Hightower has barely been on screen so far, appearing only briefly earlier in the season, but the trailer makes it clear that is about to change. And there is a good reason for that. Ormund commands the single largest remaining army in all of Westeros. That is not a small detail to gloss over. While everyone has been focused on dragons and thrones and betrayals, Ormund has quietly been sitting on a military force big enough to swing the entire war in one direction, if he decides to use it properly. His cousin Alicent has spent the last stretch of the story trying to broker peace, trying to find some way to stop the bloodshed before it consumes everyone she loves. But Ormund does not appear to be interested in peace. He appears to be interested in removing Rhaenyra from the Iron Throne by force, and he now has something that makes that goal far more realistic than it was before. Darren. With Aemond wounded and possibly out of commission, and with Aegon having already fled the throne once before, the Greens are running low on figures people can actually rally behind. Darren changes that. He gives Ormund a legitimate claimant to put forward, someone with real Targaryen blood, someone the small folk and the lords loyal to the Greens can unite around instead of scattering into confusion. On top of that, Ormund also has access to Duran's dragon, Tessarion, which means he is not just commanding the largest army in Westeros, he now potentially has Dragonfire to back it up too. That combination of soldiers, a legitimate heir, and a dragon is exactly the kind of advantage that could turn Ormund from a background character into one of the most dangerous men left standing. And there is one more thing pushing him forward. News of his uncle's death is spreading across Westeros, and grief like that has a way of turning into motivation. If Ormund was already committed to the cause before, that loss is only going to sharpen his resolve. He is not going to slow down. If anything, he is going to move faster, hit harder, and make sure that whatever happens next, the Hightower name stays tied to the Iron Throne no matter the cost. Then there is Daemon, and out of everything set up for this next episode, his storyline might end up being the most gut-wrenching of them all. After Jacaerys was killed at the Battle of the Gullet, Rhaenyra learned something that changed the entire direction of the war. A dragon seed had shown up during that battle, riding a wild dragon called Sheepstealer, and that dragon was what ultimately distracted Vermax long enough for him to be struck down, taking Jace with him. Rhaenyra did not know who was riding that dragon. All she knew was that someone had caused her son's death, and given everything happening around her, it was reasonable for her to assume that rider belonged to the Greens. So she did what any grieving, furious queen would do. She turned to Daemon, the man she trusts to handle the darkest, most difficult tasks, and she gave him a mission. Find the dragon, find the rider, bring her an answer. That hunt is set to begin in the next episode, and on the surface it sounds like a simple mission of justice. A mother wants to know who killed her son, and she has sent someone she trusts to find out. But here is where the story turns into something far more painful, because Daemon has no idea what he is actually walking into. Rhaenyra sent him to the Vale, believing Sheepstealer had gone rogue there after Jace's death, and everything about this hunt seems straightforward from the outside. Except the rider of that dragon is not some nameless enemy soldier. The rider is Daemon's own daughter. Think about what that actually means for a moment. The man tasked with hunting down and delivering justice for Jace's death is about to discover that the person responsible is someone who shares his blood, someone he is connected to in a way that changes everything about how this mission should be handled. And now he has to make a choice, and it is not going to be an easy one. Does he stay loyal to his queen, the woman he married, the woman who trusted him with this exact task? Does he bring his own daughter back to face Rhaenyra, knowing that Rhaenyra, especially in the darker headspace she seems to be settling into, may want her punished severely, possibly even executed, regardless of the family connection between them? Or does Daemon choose his daughter instead? Does he protect her, hide her, lie to his wife and queen about what he actually found, risking everything he has built with Rhaenyra just to keep his own child safe? If you have been paying attention to Daemon throughout this entire series, you already know this is not a simple decision for him. He has barely been shown interacting with his daughters on screen. He rarely even mentions them. That distance makes it genuinely difficult to imagine him choosing blood over loyalty to the crown, especially when the crown in question is his own wife, the woman who just took the Iron Throne and is clearly starting to expect absolute obedience from the people around her. Given how little connection we have seen between Daemon and this daughter, it feels far more likely that he chooses duty over family, that he delivers the answer Rhaenyra is demanding, even if it means condemning his own child in the process. And if that is really where this is heading, it starts to feel eerily similar to one of the most devastating moments in the entire Game of Thrones universe, the story of Stannis Baratheon and his daughter Shireen. That storyline remains one of the most gutting moments the franchise has ever produced, a parent choosing power, duty, and ambition over the life of their own child. If the show is building towards something similar with Daemon, it would not just be shocking, it would be one of the most emotionally devastating turns this entire series has attempted so far. So where does all of this leave us heading into episode 3? Rhaenyra is settling into a version of power that looks less like the queen who once fought for peace, and more like the ruler the histories warn us about. A woman driven by grief, fear, and the desperate need to hold on to what she has already sacrificed so much for. Alys Rivers is quietly maneuvering herself into a position of real power, using Aemond's survival as her ticket to finally getting what she has always wanted. Ormund Hightower is stepping out of the shadows with an army large enough to change the entire course of the war, backed now by a legitimate heir and a dragon of his own. And Daemon is walking straight into a decision that could destroy his family from the inside, forced to choose between the woman he married and the daughter he barely knows. Every single one of these threads is pointing toward the same outcome, a season that is about to get far darker and far more brutal than anything we have seen so far. The Dance of the Dragons is only just beginning to show its true cost, and if these theories hold up, Episode 3 is going to be the moment everything starts falling apart. There is one more piece to this puzzle that keeps getting overlooked, and it might end up being the most unpredictable factor of the entire season: Aegon. While everyone has been focused on Rhaenyra's rise, Aemond's near death and Daemon's coming heartbreak, Aegon has quietly vanished from the story, and that silence is